How did a beach ball help create one of the most terrifying scenes in Stranger Things? Which jaw-dropping sequence is one of the Duffer Brothers' favorites? And how many rats were actually on the set of Stranger Things 3? Hi, I'm Dylan. Let's dive in. The most lightweight monster ever. The third season of our favorite sci-fi series required a greater reliance on post-production than the previous two. Initially, the Duffer Brothers, who are the driving force behind the series, intended to use as many practical effects as possible in Stranger Things. But as it turned out, the Duffers became less enthusiastic about that, and a digital approach became more and more preferable. This doesn't mean that there was nothing practical on set during live-action shooting, though. After all, when you deal with child actors, you need something real to inspire and scare them. But how exactly do you convey the presence of something huge and truly hair-raising, like the Mind Flayer, to those on set? Well, there are a few options. In the first seasons, the team made a 3D printed stand-in prop for the Pollywog, which was used both as a lighting reference and an aid for the kids. Quite simple, right? However, in Season 3, the huge monster invades a shopping mall, so there was no way the 3D printing approach was gonna work this time. The special effects team actually had a tough time creating a proper solution. Initially, they constructed a Zeppelin-shaped creature shell in order to visualize and puppeteer the monster's head. Unfortunately, it weighed 100 pounds. It wasn't very practical. And it was actually quite dangerous to have something that heavy way up in the air. So the senior visual effects supervisor of the series, Paul Graff, came up with the lightest large object he could think of, a blow-up beach ball. It was taped to the end of a 20-foot pole, which allowed the team to puppeteer this head, provide an eyeline for the actors, and of course, give camera operators a shot at framing for and tracking the creature's movements. All the weight, texture, and moisture were added in post-production. So now you know what Dacre Montgomery really faced in the Starcourt Mall. And in the Jurassic Park-inspired scenes where the kids are all hiding behind counters, the beach ball was also used for the monster's face. But this wasn't the only method of bringing the Mind Flayer monster to life. The mirror helmet and a roar. Have you ever wondered what Charlie Heaton and Natalia Dyer were looking at when they shot those scenes in the hospital? Did they have to imagine the monstrous 6 or 7 foot tall creature they were fleeing from? The actors revealed that the scenes at the hospital were really intense and hard to shoot, as they involved a lot of running and practical effects. It took 2 days of filming, and each day lasted between 12 and 14 hours.
It was the craziest night of filming, because it was a late night. Again, you have these flickering lights, and then here's this guy.
Charlie recalled that he had to do a lot of rehearsals, especially for the scene where he had to hit his co-star Michael Park with a vase. It turns out that there were several breakaway sugar vases and a rubber one, and he was really scared to hit Michael too hard, which, unfortunately, he did.
It's one of those where you're like... And then
hit me.
He was like, hit me. And I think
got him.
I got him on the ear, and I just remember his ear being red.
Amazingly, the scene with the monster didn't look terrifying in real life. It was actually a little bit absurd. The senior visual effects supervisor explained that he asked the assistant stunt coordinator to really become the monster, conveying all that evil energy. I need you to roar, and you can't let yourself be intimidated by the fact you're wearing a ridiculous red spandex suit with a giant silver ball helmet. Oh yes, the stunt performer literally spread his arms and charged down the hallway after Charlie and Natalia, screaming at the top of his lungs. By the way, his outfit was red because the color reflected on the hospital walls, which later helped the special effects team to create a monster that gave us shivers. But what was the reason for the mirror helmet? It turns out it allowed them to see all the light sources for shading the monster in post-production. The lights that go crazy are definitely one of the most memorable visual elements of the series. So the flickering light bouncing off the shiny helmet was replicated on screen and helped to create this trademark Stranger Things effect. And the best manifestation of this in the third season is the opening sequence inside the mysterious Russian lab. A mix of jet engine turbine and a ray gun. The massive underground machine, operating right under the feet of the unaware Hawkins residents, became one of the biggest thrills for the visual effects team. The device that attempted to force open the gates to the Upside Down was initially described as a cross between a jet engine turbine and a ray gun. In the opening sequence, it was created as a fully CG environment, including CG characters, those guys in chem suits. The Duffer Brothers called it jaw-dropping and one of their favorites. But what about the scene where Hopper heroically sacrificed himself? The show's art department actually built the Russian machine, but the turbine wasn't functional. The skeletal version of the device, placed on stage, provided a sense of what the shape of the machine would be if it were fully built. Then the visual effects team came into play. They added an interactive element that later served as a basis for animation. It looked like a Christmas tree-like metal scaffold, spiked with tracking dots and featuring large silver tracking balls to reflect the lighting. And even that wasn't the end. For the final shots of the sequence, special effects people built a cylindrical rotating rig with lights in it and mirrors inside and out. The complicated device had an automobile motor that could spin at any desired speed, providing that trademark chaotic lighting. And the rest was created digitally, including the powerful beams emitted by the machine. Wow, now that you know how this scene was shot, we bet you love it as much as the Duffers do. But not every special effect has to be huge in order to be impressive. The trained rats were not impressive enough. The enormous slimy embodiment of the Mind Flayer is definitely the show's most memorable and grossest monster so far. But it's not the first ghastly creature we meet in Season 3 of Stranger Things. The rats were basically the first incarnation of this monster, just like the Pollywog and Demogorgon. So a great deal of work went into creating exploding rats and moving blobs of goo. Amazingly, the team considered using trained rats for part of the filming because the Duffers initially wanted to use as many practical effects as possible. However, they decided against using real animals since you can't just explode live rats. The next thing the special effects team thought of was doll rats and remote-controlled rats. Unfortunately, they were quote-unquote hideously dysfunctional, so these puppets just served as a reference for what the shot was going to be. Later, they were all replaced by the CG rats, and they ended up looking totally realistic and believable. There was only one real rat on the show, on a photograph that Nancy needed to show her boss at the Hawkins Post, and even that one didn't make the final cut. Of course, these were not the only scenes where CGI played an important role. Many locations and environments were digitally created or enhanced, including the Starcourt Mall, some of its exteriors, and the thrilling fight over and into the abandoned factory. And which of these effects impressed you the most? Do you agree that the third season was the most exciting so far? Don't be shy to share with us in the comments, and thanks for staying with OSSA Movies.